Good morning, California. My name is Pedro Toledo, the rotating chair for the California Citizens Commission. After public comments and roll call, I'll go over the agenda for the next couple of days during the chair reports. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Sheffield, who will be calling roll call.
Okay. Commissioner Turner.
Good morning here.
Good morning. Commissioner Vasquez. No. Commissioner Yee.
Here.
Commissioner Ahmed.
Here.
Commissioner Okutagawa.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson. Commissioner Fernandez.
Here.
Commissioner Fornashari.
Here.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Here.
Commissioner Limons.
Here.
Commissioner Sadwani.
Here.
Commissioner Sinai. I see you. Commissioner Taylor.
Present.
Commissioner Toledo.
Here.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Katie, please instruct the public on how they can participate in public comment.
Yes, Chair. Good morning.
Good morning.
In order to maximize transparency and public participation in our process, the commissioners will be taking public comment by phone. To call in, dial the telephone number provided on the live stream feed. It is 877-853-5247. When prompted to enter the meeting ID number provided on the live stream feed, it is 930-4716-7360 for this meeting. When prompted to enter a participant ID, simply press the pound key. Once you have dialed in, you will be placed in a queue. To indicate you wish to comment, please press *9. This will raise your hand for the moderator. When it is your turn to speak, you will hear a message that says, "The host would like you to talk." Press *6 to speak. If you would like to give your name, please state and spell it for the record. You are not required to provide your name to give public comment. Please make sure to mute your computer or live stream audio to prevent any feedback or distortion during your call. Once you are waiting in the queue, they'll be alert for when it is your turn to speak. And again, please turn down the live stream volume. The commission is taking general public comment at this time. And we do have someone in the queue. And again, if you would like to comment and you are in the queue, please press *9 to raise your hand indicating you would like to comment.
Please invite the caller to
They're not raising their hand at this time,
they're
Chair?
not. Okay.
Yeah. So at this time, we do not have anybody with their hand raised wishing to comment.
Let's give it a minute or two.
Mm-hmm.
While we're waiting, is there any commissioner that has a general announcement or any updates?
Chair, we do have someone with their hand raised.
Okay, let's do
right
that.
now. I'm sorry. Okay, give me 1 second. Your line is open.
Yes, this is Renee Westa Lusk. I'm just having a question regarding the letter that was in the share column of the handouts by Schenkman and Hughes. Is that going to be discussed at today's Legal Affairs Committee meeting report?
It'll be discussed during the meeting. It may not be today. It might be tomorrow.
Oh, okay. I
But
just
it will be
wanted to.
discussed. Yes.
I think it's real important. Thank you.
Thank you. We agree.
And we do have another caller. And your line is open.
Hi, this is Sewing, spelled THOVINHBANH.
The floor is yours.
Hope you. Great, thank you so much. So, good morning, everyone. I want to first commend for the good materials related to the redistricting basics. I actually learned a bunch of new stuff as well, and appreciate the graphs. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to be very real and maybe a little raw. So the materials itself, I think, spoke wonderfully of inclusiveness, any and all voice for Californians. But I fear a little bit that the language part, like not having the meetings in different languages, may send a very different and an opposite message. You know, I don't sense this intentional, but in the past, it's often not those who speak English that have been left out of things, but rather those who don't speak English. So if I may indulge me, like if you folks are all English speaking and I want you guys to come to a meeting, and when you come to this meeting, the meeting goes something like this, you know, cảm ơn quý vị lời bữa nay là quan trọng lắm, tại bữa nay là em muốn là chỉ anh là hiểu cái này, chuyện này là quan trọng cho nha. So if you came to a meeting and it was all in Vietnamese, and the materials are all in Vietnamese, but you only speak English, I mean, there's multiple factors. For me, to bring you to a meeting that didn't have translation for you jeopardizes my relationship with you. So I know that there's a lot of communities, Asian Americans Advancing Justice, for example, Malda, for example, Naleo, and so forth, that want to help this body bring people to the meetings. But if they use their capital, their relationship capital, and their other capital to bring forth folks to the meeting, and the meeting isn't translated, it jeopardizes their relationship with that community, and it also sends a signal to the communities that they're not entirely welcome, they're not entirely invited. So I can't imagine that would be the message and the intentions of this body. You folks are very busy. You folks have other things to do. The reason why you came to this body is because you want to make sure citizens of California and all Californians, regardless of status, are well represented. So I just want folks to be thoughtful of that. And in terms of ways around it or ways that we could potentially improve, I know there's going to be savings related to not having to rent spaces, savings not having to buy equipment related to hearing devices, savings not having to hire multiple translations. I've done meetings in Zooms where there have been like 3 other 4 language lines. So once you get a language line, let's say Spanish, which includes 10 million people, so we've got to have at least Spanish. For Spanish, if you hire a Spanish interpreter, it could be 5 people that join the Zoom meeting or 500. It doesn't matter. They all listen to that one line. The savings that you get from having Zoom meetings versus having in-person meeting where you have to have 500 equipment. So I think there's leverage that you can use because of this way of being, the Zoom process that may be maximized. And I can share thoughts around that. I've had to finagle with that. I've done trainings where it was Spanish, Japanese, Chinese, and Vietnamese at the same time. So I've learned a lot of mistakes along the way, but have some knowledge around that as well. So I hope that we I don't know, here's the raw and the real. I guess, you know, the North Star is our guiding post. And I hope we create spaces where folks feel welcome, where folks feel invited. And if we want folks to fully participate, I mean, California at the very least, it's got to include Spanish because that's 10 million people. We have 20 million people that speak English, over 10 million people that speak Spanish. If all the meetings are in English, except for the comment part, it does not send the vibe that you're welcome here. It doesn't send the vibe that we want to hear your voice and that you matter. So I hope, I know I'm starting the meeting quite heavy. I apologize for that. I hope that that cannot be our intentions. And I think as Californians, as this body, we can probably do better. So I thank you for your indulgence. I thank you for allowing me to be in this space, to say it in this way, and I hope you take that with wholeheartedness. That's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. We are committed to meaningfully engage all communities, including delivering our message in a linguistically competent manner. Any other comments in the queue? Commenters?
So if you would like to make a comment, please press *9 to raise your hand. But other than that, Chair, there's one person in the queue that has not raised their hand, but they've been listening the entire time. Everybody who has had their hand raised has commented.
Thank you, Katie.
Uh-huh.
All right, with that, we'll go to general announcements and commissioner update. Does any commissioner have an update or a general announcement they want to make? Seeing none, we'll go to the chair's report. And I'm just going to go over the agenda for the next couple of days. So at 10 o'clock, we'll be going over item 11, which includes the line drawer RFP presentations, evaluation, and scoring. I anticipate that we'll go to lunch at about 12:30, and that at that time we'll enter, or after we come back from lunch, we'll enter closed session. I don't anticipate coming back to public session today. We'll likely be coming back tomorrow, or we will be coming back tomorrow at 9:30, where we'll do subcommittee reports, staff reports, legal affairs committee, and item 12, data management. We'll then hold a closed session on 9:30 on Friday and return to the public session after that the closed session. So it's about 9:43. We have time for just one short staff report, so I'm going to ask Freddie to give the communications report.
Commissioner Toledo?
Or do I have a?
Commissioner Toledo,
Marion.
just one point, you should report that no action was taken during the last closed session.
We did report it when we came back last. We came back from public session after the last closed session, if I remember correctly.
Did you come back into public session after it? Excuse me, then I didn't realize that.
So,
Right.
If I'm, so with that, let's go to Freddie.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Just wanted to announce that the new website is up. I've been fixing content throughout the weekend. I didn't realize, but transferring over the agendas from the old website to the new one, didn't take me a while. I was doing that yesterday. I managed to get 3 meetings over because of all the content and collateral materials, public comment that's attached to each meeting. So that's going to take me maybe a week to finish. So I'll be working intermittently throughout the day doing that. I did include a splash page on the new website. So the first time you enter into the website, it tells you we're in transition. The 2010 content will be at .ca.gov. Click here to go there. The 2020 content is at the .org site. Click here to go there, and it gives you a picture of both so that people can identify where they want to go. So that is up. I did want to share that we're continuing to do media trainings. I know we had to reschedule some this week. Apologies for that, but we've had some unforeseen circumstances. We will get right back to that, rescheduling those so that commissioners have the skills that they need to get in front of the camera and talk to reporters. And I also included in this week the duties for the communications teams. So just so that commissioners know who's responsible for what, the biggest change that I added in there in the responsibilities, and I would pull it up, but my computer's acting up this morning, so I can't, is that Cecilia will be in charge of all social media. I am going to be in charge of updating the website just because I am in front of my computer most of the time and it's easy for me to just update things. And she will be in charge of doing the media training in addition to all the social media channels and stations and monitoring to make sure that when we are mentioned that information gets to the executive director and the chairs for the meetings immediately. And then we strategize on how we want to respond if we want to respond. I will continue to be in charge of reaching out to do media pitching throughout California. So I'm currently doing a media list for every zone. I have completed 2 so far, and I'll share those with the zone leaders as soon as I'm done with those, so that you can do an initial hello, I'm the commissioner, pretty similar to what you're doing with the CBOs with the media, and then I'll do the second follow-up to get stories and pitching stories and anything of that sort. Then everything, my other report would be the materials, but that has a committee report pending, so I will leave it at that.
Commissioner Sinai?
Freddie, I was just wondering, does it make sense for you to make the first call to media contacts and then introduce us versus the other way around? I'm just, until we get our media training course and everything and our talking points, I'm just wondering if that makes more sense.
Freddie?
Yeah, I think, I can certainly do that. I'll go about it that way. I'll make the first round and I'll include or CC the zone leaders. There are some commissioners that have already reached out on their own, so I'll leave it at the discretion of each commissioner. So I'll say that I'll do the first round and CC commissioners unless you want to reach out first or have already done so.
Any other questions for Director Seha? Okay, with Commissioner Yee.
I just want to say, Freddie, the new website looks great, and I know it was a long time coming. The redirects look really good too, and very usable and very attractive. So good work on those.
Yeah.
I agree. The website's coming along really well. With that, I did actually, I was mistaken previously. We did go back into closed session last week, and so I want to make sure that that gets captured and corrected in the record. We did not take action after during that session. So thank you, Marion. I was a little bit confused in terms of timeline. With that, we are going to be preparing for the line drawer session. So I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Anderson, who will give us a little overview and prep us for the meeting or the interview process.
Well, thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. So I'm hoping that people notice that that is on the agenda, and this morning that they're interested in hearing about what happened for what are the results from our RFP for a line drawing consultant. And we did announce this. It is on our website. We did the opening Monday morning, and we did receive 1 proposal. Now, this may seem a bit like a surprise. It should not be. California is over 40 million people. It is big. This is a daunting task. I apologize, but I had a little camera issue this morning. It's a daunting task. Many of the consultants who do this type of work will have multiple contracts rather than doing one large contract like the state of California. As you can imagine, cities, counties, all across the United States have, the need for redistricting. And so there are multiple tasks that can be done, or you do one large, very arduous task, which is California. So that said, we are very pleased to receive one proposal and from a very qualified group, and they will be doing a presentation shortly. And what they've been asked to do is to give us a plan of what they envision is how to redistrict our great large state. And so they've been asked for many different factors, given the pandemic issue, given our diversity, both geographical and in terms of populace, and actual the Voting Rights Act with California, and all of these considerations, public input, how do we do this during this time, and how to engage with all the commissioners. So that is what we'll be hearing shortly. Then there'll be a break after the presentation. We'll come back after that for about a question and answer session, after which the commission will then go into discussing the entire proposal, and we will actually come to one decision about what to do with this group. So with that in mind, I will let them present themselves when they do come on. I don't know if I don't see anybody on yet. I don't know if we've heard. If Christian, have you been in touch with anyone this morning about when they're coming in or anything like that?
Commissioner Anderson, Karen McDonald reached out to me, and they have received their invites and are expecting to log in at 10 o'clock, so here in about 7 minutes.
Okay. That's really all the introduction I have. Commissioner Sadwani, did you want to say something? And are there any questions before we jump into this?
Sure. I'll just add on that this has been a process, a long time in the making. So we appreciate the support of the full commission throughout the many steps that we've had to go through in the creation of the RFP and the sending out the RFP so that folks could see it and respond. So we very much appreciate everyone's input thus far, and we're looking forward to a great conversation today. I think just to underscore what Commissioner Anderson has already said, we asked in the RFP that proposers submit to us a plan. That is not necessarily the plan, but simply for them to bring their expertise to bear on our process. We will, of course, retain the responsibility of finalizing an ultimate plan, but I do hope that you've all had a chance to review it. There was a lot of interesting ideas in there. It seemed as though the proposers had been it sounded like they had been paying careful attention to our deliberations, which was interesting to see. And so I look forward to a fruitful discussion following their presentation. Commissioner Anderson, do you want to mention anything about some of the documents that have been posted for commissioners, the evaluation criteria? Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. Yes, one thing that we're basically, originally this would have been, if we'd had multiple proposals, this would still go in the same procedure. And to make it, this is our RFP was considered an RFP 2, which is, this is not many contracts that go before the state. It's a cost basis only. Clearly, this is the need and the requirements for this position are not just an automatic, particularly given our situation with COVID, how it's changed. Look how we're meeting, just for obvious reasons. So this required some different ways of looking at things, different planning, different actions. And which is why we went with, we really need qualifications here. It's not the bottom dollar. So as a result, there have been, but you still have to compare a similar product. And to do that, we did come up with a rather elaborate scoring procedure. We still have done this same evaluation. It's just we don't necessarily need to talk of the numbers at all, because really it's all qualifications. And we're talking about, are they well qualified? Are they qualified moderately? That sort of thing. And the criteria that we have been looking at, and we ask everyone to kind of to consider is the plan was actually should be addressing, the following issues, based on your experience, that being the line drawer, the present pandemic and the challenges of redistricting California, what approaches would you suggest the commission to consider in accomplishing the redistricting, and why? And for each of these items, we need to consider their approach, their consideration of public input, their consideration of all the RFP requirements, which we're not going into right now, and their consideration of Bagley-Keene. The other item is, we did actually say, commission may decide to hold simultaneous 4 to 6 hour remote public input meetings in 2 to 3 different parts of the state. Describe how you would approach these meetings and manage the line drawing, keeping in mind the RFP requirements for line drawing in public. Then, based on your experience, how would you recommend the commission approach the VRA compliance during the line drawing process? And so important items that we're looking for, that as the public, as you're watching these are items that the commission should also be looking for, is the plans, are they the recognition of the importance of public input? How important is that in their plan? Inclusivity, as an integration, is it important? How important is it? What is the role of the commissioner versus the role of the line drawer? Interaction with other consultants that we're planning on hiring. The plan's recognition of the importance of transparency in the line drawing process, and their understanding of inclusion of many of the different RFP requirements into the plan, which one issue that we will talk about is the disclosure requests, because as contractors for the state, you usually don't have to disclose all the requirements. Basically, anyone who wants to work for the commission must also disclose all the requirements that we as commissioners had to meet, such as of the 10 years before taking on this job, what political parties have been involved with, money we've been given, all those criteria, which are in the bag in our the Voters First Act. So there is a very large disclosure portion in the RFP, and we will go over some of those items today in our question and answer session. So those are basically the items that I was going to discuss. Sarah, any other things?
No, I think you covered everything, and it looks like some of our guests have arrived.
Sorry. Mr. Dressler and Ms. McDonald, are you there?
We are.
Great. At this point, we might welcome, and we might turn this over to you to introduce yourselves, and please continue with your presentation.
Yes, good morning, commissioners. I just got a notification that my web camera is not working, so I apologize. Luckily, all of you know what I look like, and hopefully I will be able to fix that momentarily while my colleague Andrew starts with the presentation. I'm Karen McDonald with a different hat on today. I am here as the owner of Q2 Data and Research and the lead of this team that has provided this proposal to you. And my colleague, Andrew Drexler, who will be doing this presentation with me, he is directing the PowerPoint. So I will give you just a couple of introductory points about Q2 Data and Research. We are, of course, California-based. We are in Oakland, California, proudly, and we're women-owned and operated. There is one exception that we have to the women-operated item, and that is Guancheng Li, who is part of this proposal. And you will hear a little bit about Guancheng, who has worked with us for quite some time also. We are strictly nonpartisan, and we specialize in working with independent redistricting commissions. In fact, if you had a chance to look at our qualifications, which I'm sure you probably have, you saw that our redistricting experience with commissions goes back to the Redistricting Commission in San Diego in 2001, which was a very successful project. And really, when I think back of the independent redistricting commissions that I've worked with since, San Diego was really the starting point of a lot of the methodology that I and my colleagues have used in every commission-based redistricting afterwards. So it was a great project, and it kind of set the tone for things that came afterwards. When Proposition 11 was on the ballot, if you look at the language of that commission, it actually included a lot of the items that we started in the San Diego process also. So this has been a pretty long journey for us. And we love working with independent redistricting commissions. I mean, a colleague of mine always says that every commission is different, and I think that is true. And we really embrace that uniqueness of commissions, and we're all about collaboration and, designing a process with the commission that the commission just can embrace and that really fits its needs. So with that, I will move things over to Andrew while I try to fix my video camera here, and hopefully I will see you very soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. Thank you, commissioners, for giving us this opportunity to present to you. My name is Andrew Dreschler. I'm president of Haystack DNA. Haystack DNA is, a big data predictive analytics firm. So we do redistricting work, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But we, as Commissioner Anderson was talking about, sort of the amount of work that has to do with recommissioning or redistricting comes along usually once a decade. So in the meantime, we are a big data firm where we have a lot of different clients. If you looked at our disclosures, we have some political clients. About a third of our work is political, but we have a lot of work in the healthcare industry. We've done a lot of work in auto industry, entertainment. So we've worked in a lot of different spaces and places over the last decade. And one of the things that we did a decade ago was work for the Arizona Independent Commission. Our firm was selected to do the work in Arizona. They had a little bit of a smaller commission with 5 commissioners, but the work was still pretty big. We traveled collectively. The commission and parts of our team traveled nearly 30,000 miles around the state. Participating in dozens of public hearings and public meetings, getting input from numerous different individuals around the state of Arizona. So we understand the importance of the independent commission, the importance of your job. And that's, we were excited to have this opportunity to, present a team with Karen in Q2 to present to the commission the team. The other big thing that we've been working on for the last couple of years is the Redistricting Data Hub. The Redistricting Data Hub, I think a good example is taking what the California statewide database has done for California, and what we're trying to do is do that for the rest of the country. When it comes to redistricting information, what we're trying to do is democratize it so that individuals, groups, have access to data, and that they are not spending a lot of time pulling together the tremendous effort of pulling together all the different data sets. So that is something that we've been working on for the last 2 years. It is a completely nonpartisan effort. We're very proud of that. And so when this opportunity came to submit a proposal to the California Citizens Redistricting Commission, we were excited to do that. Together, our teams, I think we have unmatched experience with statewide redistricting commissions, both, as Karen mentioned, in 2011, what her team did with California, and then our team did in Arizona. And that's sort of, we knew about each other back then, and had admiration for each other, and understood sort of the challenges of what goes through an independent commission. So we have experience in the line drawings and doing this in public, moving the lines with the direction of the commission, and not going off doing it in secret, and I think that sets us apart in terms of making sure that we're listening to you. You guys are our bosses. We are the technical consultants, and today we have a plan per your request. We presented you with a plan, a well thought out plan, but of course, as we will say multiple times, you guys, we're taking your lead. So besides the experts in, being experts in the redistricting software, we've had success with the voting rights implementations, both clearly in California, but also in Arizona. While Section 5 has been removed from as not a requirement for pre-clearance for anymore, Arizona did need to get pre-cleared by the Department of Justice in 2011, and we were excited to be part of the team working closely with council and getting the maps pre-cleared for the first time in Arizona's history, on the first time in Arizona's history. So we were excited that we were able to do maps and that were in place and stayed in place for the entire decade. And I think we have a pretty comprehensive approach. We wrote about this, about data security, monitoring, and storage, that we added in an appendix. We thought that was a very important part of it. We didn't squeeze it all into that 10 pages, so we did add that as an appendix. So we wanted to make sure that that was part of what we had. So you're different, and we feel like we are different. You're both, as we mentioned, you're an independent commission. You have been doing this for for many months now, and you sort of understand what it takes. And I think one of the big things is transparency. Filling out the documentation, attachment D, where we all had to list our disclosures of every client that we worked with for the past decade. We understand that the disclosures that you as commissioners had to go through. So understand the process and understand the importance of the transparency that we come to as a team, that what we're doing is understood, and it's understood not only by the commissioners, but the public as well. So that's why we think that we believe that it's very important to be transparent through this entire process, that our conversations, what we're doing with the maps is, directed by you. that it's in an open deliberation and talked about in collaboration, so that there's an understanding of what's going on. So that's what you have to do, and we feel like we do that as well, both Q2 and Haystack. We welcome the transparency, and feel that it's very important, and we have a record, both in terms of working with statewide independent commissions and collecting public input, listening to what communities of interest are. So that's something that we have done, and we feel like we're highly qualified to be your partners on the mapping process moving forward. So the plan, the 10-page plan, we're going to go into this a little bit more per the request. We're going to talk about this. So it is a 10-page plan that, again, is a recommendation, as Commissioner Anderson pointed out. It's not by all means what needs to happen. Clearly, we wanted to present you a plan, work closely with you to make sure that there was comfort in what we were suggesting, and we are open to listening to you and making the appropriate suggestions. So our plan includes regional line drawing. We're going to see the regions broken out in the next slide, but just basic big picture, we're going to have 4 different mappers tackling each of the regions, each of the 4 regions. And then we also have a mapper that is going to help bring the four regions together to make sure that we're combining them in an appropriate way. So that's what the process of the 5th mapper is. And when I think this is a very important point, when we talk about the regions, that they're not representing any proposed lines. I think that's an important point, that we needed a part, as you know, there's 40 million people in the state of California. How do you start tackling this? And how do you do this appropriately? And that's something that we gave a lot of thought to and wanted to present it. So at each meeting, we're going to have at least 1 line drawer and a senior consultant. We'll also have back-end support on the team who will be supporting us to, capture information, because there's going to be a lot of public information and public input that are going to be happening at these meetings. So we want to make sure that they're going that it's going to be that we have the appropriate team in place to capture everything, and then provide you with comments, what we heard, to make sure that we're all on the same page as we work on this together. Furthermore, besides the line drawers, which will be a very big part of the team, and the support staff that will be working closely with the line drawers, we have 2 people, 2 additional people. One person is dedicated to managing data security and information, data transfer of very large files. As a data analytics firm, we have a lot of experience with this, and as I mentioned, we have a couple healthcare clients, so know the importance of making sure that the data stays and is transferred in a secure way. That's something that's extremely important to us. And then we have another person on the team that will be working on to help with some of the administrative details as well. So we have a pretty robust team that we feel like we can handle everything that is in front of you and is in front of the commission. As I mentioned, we talked about this and we went into further detail in our proposal. We have a box in there sort of breaking down, and I can't stress enough, this is just a proposed plan of how we are suggesting to break this down. And there's going to be some things that make sense. Intuitively, I think you look at LA County with nearly 10 million people. I think having a mapper focus on that alone, I think, is going to be very important. But then breaking up the rest of the state, we broke it out into the outreach zones. Again, we feel like this is a proposed plan and want to work closely with the entire team to go through this to make sure that this makes sense and how we're approaching this makes sense. We listened into some of the meetings. We haven't been to every single second of the meeting. So there's, working with the commission as a whole, but subcommittees, I think, is going to be very important to get feedback on how we approach this. And then finally, I just want to talk about the team a little bit more. Karen introduced herself, and she's going to be the project leader. And I will be the project manager, working closely with the CRC staff to make sure that we're in place when there's meetings, making sure that the appropriate team members are at the meetings and ready, prepared for the meetings. Working with the staff with any logistical, if we get to a point where we're in person, where we're printing out maps and making sure that those are available, or if there is a request for maps on the website, I will be working with the staff to make sure that the needs are set and making sure that everything that we're talking about in the meetings and any proposed maps, draft maps, that those are available to you. So that's something. Jamie is going to be the lead line drawer and regional coordinator, and she's going to be working closely with the rest of the line drawers, which will include Tamia, Brad, Willie, and John. So together, that's the core mapping team. That doesn't mean those are the only mappers, but that's going to be the core mapping team that we're going to have assigned to this project, and feel that each of them and all of their resumes are in our proposal, so you can go look at their experiences of what they have done over the last decade and previously in terms of mapping. So you do have a very experienced team here. Three other people that we have on here. Adriana is going to be working closely with the mapping, the line drawers, and there's going to be times where, as we get into meetings where there's a request to pull up a map that would be part of the COI tool that we are working with, that the commissioners may want to see a little bit more in detail. That's something that Adriana will be helping with, and doing some of the meeting support. And then Sue is sort of a dual role. Will be doing some of the meeting support, but really helping us with the administrative part of this contract. As mentioned, this is a very large contract, a lot of moving pieces. So we wanted to have Sue, who has experience in this, be part of the team who's going to be bringing in her expertise and making sure that all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, and that we're fulfilling our part of the contract. Greg Chin is I don't have a line directly to him, to any one person. I think from a data security standpoint, he's going to be working with the entire team to make sure that we're all aware of any data transfers that will be going on, that they're done in a safe and a secure way, that our personal machines are protected, that we don't have any issues with that, and we want to make sure that we're not compromised in any way. So we take that, the data security and information in a very serious manner, and we have a very qualified individual who will be working with us on that. I'm now going to turn it over to Karen, who's going to talk about the plan in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. And my video is now working, so hello, commissioners. And I should also tell you that was the first time that Andrew has ever mispronounced my name. So go figure. So good morning again. I am going to walk a little bit more through the plan that we have presented to you. And I should tell you that plan was not always 10 pages. I think at some point it was 16 pages, and then it went to 14 pages. And, we were limited to 10 pages. So there are quite a few things there are some other ideas that were floating around on this team. And we're, of course, very happy to share them with you, if we move forward with this. So I'm going to just hit on some of the bigger ideas while not hopefully, boring you with repeating the entire 10 pages. One big thing I think that's happened for all of us is, of course, the census delay. And it's turned something that we all planned for into really interesting times. The census delay, however, may open possibilities for more pre-map meetings because we have a little bit more time now. And that may actually be a good thing, especially looking at what happened, if you're comparing to 2011, there was not that much time. And, while the line drawing time is essentially the same, you do have more time to prepare and to go out into the communities. And of course, you have other tools available also. So this is a really interesting time that we could all take full advantage of to get into the communities and get a lot of input. Another thing that really has changed over the last many years is that we are now all, unfortunately, we're all used to online meetings, but also the technology, of course, of online meetings has changed dramatically. And online meetings can save so much time on travel and really increase the time that we can spend on meetings, because you're not going to be sitting in cars going from meeting to meeting, and neither are we. And Andrew was talking about how many miles that they covered in Arizona. I mean, if you look at Arizona is, so much smaller than California, and you can imagine the kind of traveling that the commissioners and also the line drawing consultants did the last time. There was a lot of being stuck in traffic and just, trying to get from A to B. And that, of course, came at the cost of the time that we actually had to have meetings with communities. So that is something that, has really changed and that we can take advantage of. So, it's a time to make lemonade, essentially. Another idea that we had when we looked at how meetings, in our experience have worked with independent redistricting commissions is that it's really difficult. And of course, everybody who's ever gone to a city council meeting and has tried to present or give input on a particular item knows this. You just don't know when you're going to be up. So, you could be up at 8 o'clock or you could be up at 10 o'clock. So you better bring a sandwich, as I always say. And I think that is something that we could really improve on by perhaps creating an appointment system. And again, these are ideas that we're having. And, I'm not saying that we have all of the answers at all, but it's something that we can perhaps collaborate on and figure out whether, we can create something like that that will work for you and that will work for the public, so that the public can plan in advance and kind of just know, that they're going to be home for dinner because, their slot is going to be the first one in the meeting and so forth. Because, everybody has childcare needs and they need to be at work the next day and so forth. So it just allows for better planning for the public, and it also allows for better public for you. If we create this appointment system, we could incorporate an advance request for interpretation assistance so that people are lined up and we don't have to sit in the meeting and go, okay, do we have an interpreter available? You're up now, making sure that that person knows that their services are required at that particular time. So again, this is just all about better planning, a more smooth process, and perhaps saving a little bit of time on the logistics and just coming in and having more time for the actual meat. So actually, and I say this as a vegetarian, so for actually the presentation itself. Next slide, please, Andrew. Thank you so much. So another idea that comes along with this is that we could perhaps ask people to pre-identify the geography when they're coming in, and that could be something on the meeting sign-up form or so. What area would you like to talk about, or perhaps even, did you submit something? Because if you did submit something, I mean, we've talked, of course, different hat on about the COI tool quite a bit. There is going to be a link on there that we can click on. We can pull up their their community of interest, and if people are coming in and they want to talk to you about it, if they're pre-identifying this is what they want to talk about, or if they even just say, I want to talk about, the city of Oakland, or, the city of Sacramento, then the mappers in the meeting can be prepared for that, and they can pull up the geography already. And in particular, if it's geography that's a lot smaller, that may be a little bit harder to find. The conversation is just a lot more efficient when we know in advance what's required. But as Andrew also said, we have a very comprehensive team, and we've thought about how to make these meetings more efficient. And having mapping assistants, having the senior consultant there, and the mapper and mapping assistant, all of this will turn into just a smoother process in us being faster. And faster on our end means that you can have a more efficient conversation with the public. A really big deal, of course, and something that we all need to keep in mind always, is that we need to mitigate the digital divide. And one idea that we had was that perhaps you might look into collaborating with the outreach grant recipients to see if they might be up for or able to assist with an appointment system, and also with requests for assistance. That I think that would, again, just on the front end, make for a much smoother entry point for people that may not be as used to using a web form and so forth. And again, this is a collaboration that the commission could have with the outreach grant recipients, with the line drawers, really with the entire team. And it goes to my last point, which is the 5 A's of technology access: availability, affordability, awareness, abilities, and agency. All of these items need to be taken into consideration with every piece of this conversation. And to that point, reserving time for people that don't have appointments, that's a really big deal too. I've been looking with my neighbors into how people can gain access, for example, to COVID vaccinations right now. And if you've looked at it, most of the scheduling for the appointments is via web form, and those web forms are really difficult. And a lot of my neighbors, some of you know where I live, a lot of my neighbors don't have web access to that point. So there are barriers that sometimes we're not obviously aware of as people that hang on computers and stare onto screens all day. And I think it's a good thing for everybody to just remind themselves every day that there are people that are not operating the way that we do. So of course all of this. So anyway, next slide, please, and I'll get off my little soapbox here. So options to participate. This is something that we also discussed at length in the plan. We think it's a really good thing, even if people, if the COVID restrictions are loosened, if perhaps COVID magically goes away, that you continue to offer this remote meeting participation. It was really difficult for people to get to meetings last time. Some people were driving many hours, and not everybody has that luxury. So remote meeting participation, figuring out where people can access meetings also. Of course, we're going to have access sites and so forth. So there is going to be some infrastructure there, again, working with the outreach partners and so forth. I think this will bring more people into the process. And so we think it's a good thing to continue to offer that moving forward. It definitely allows those that can't travel to participate just in general. And, I think it's just a good thing, in particular now that many people are used to it. So it will bring more people into the process for sure. And then also to continue to stream and post videos. Of course, you're already doing this, but, again, it's good to be mindful that there are a lot of people that are, working right now, for example, and they may be watching this video later tonight because they want to know what happened. And so that's a really great practice that the commission has already implemented, and we think it's a good thing moving forward. And of course, it aids in transparency and accessibility also. Next slide, please, Andrew. Thank you. One really important thing, I think, is to just conduct some dry runs when we move into, actual line drawing and looking at, when you are moving into line drawing and looking at maps, to, collaborate with the video and streaming consultants. We had a great working relationship in 2011 with the videographers that were hired the last time, that are currently also streaming this particular meeting, and I think that was a very important one, because sometimes there are hiccups. Obviously, they are experts in things that we're not, and it takes everybody to make sure that this is a successful process. So we know that people that are watching this online need to be able to see the detailed maps, and you need to see the detailed maps. And so conducting some dry runs, really collaborating with the video and streaming consultants is important. And of course, we want to do this before the public is subjected to us figuring out whether we should be clicking this button or that button, because there's nothing more aggravating than watching people figuring out technical difficulties. And I apologize again for my video not working earlier. So there are multiple avenues that I think you are already exploring, of course, to provide input. And we just wanted to let you know we are with you. I think this is great that you're thinking about these various ways for input collection. I think the bulk of the public testimony will probably not be received in public hearings, if our experience is any guide here. And even if you are doing what you're doing already, which is having public hearings and opening things up and so forth, but there are still a lot of people that feel that mail and email are their most best used options, because they may want to say more than what they can say in 2 or 3 minutes, and they may just be more comfortable with this. And then that goes to my last point here. There are a lot of people that are not comfortable speaking in public or able to speak in public, and so making sure that there are many different options available. The sky's the limit pretty much is a really good practice, and we're here to support you with whatever you want to do. Jamie in particular just pointed out that a really good thing to do would be just to have a simple input form that can be filled out online. That will be really simple to do, and that we could do on your website. We can help you with this, of course, and just a few items, and a pretty quick one, something that could also be printed perhaps, that people can give to their neighbor to fill out, and then send you away. That's a pretty good thing to do also. And again, I know you have probably thought about this even more than we have, and we're here to support you. Then there's public map submissions. So we, the last time there were a couple of days where the commission, the last commission, the 2011 commission, invited various groups to present maps. And you, of course, have heard the term unity map and unity mapping and so forth. And that is just one of the examples of the maps that were presented. There were 2 days to do this. And I think because there are just more options now, there's more accessibility to online mapping tools and so forth, I think there will be more maps. You're obviously going to get a whole lot more COI maps because of the COI tool. But, considering when and how to schedule hearings for maps that are provided by the public, I think really, deserves some time. You may need more than just a couple of days, because there may be more people that are now in the process that are capable of developing maybe statewide maps and want to, just because the technology is available. And, there's going to be obviously some free technology available also. And one important point to consider is to create some criteria for selecting presenters, because you may get a lot of people that want to present, and just figuring out like who should be presenting there. And that can be a pretty tricky conversation to have, but I think it's good to just think about these criteria in advance. and then let people know, who is going to be invited to these and who should be presenting. Then, figuring out the most appropriate time for the public plan presentation. So when in the schedule, I saw you have this really great Gantt chart, and took a look at that, and so figuring out where this might fit into the Gantt chart would be a great thing to do, also in advance, so that people can plan ahead. And one other thing is, I think that there was an idea presented that the CRC, that you should not be working on any maps until you've seen some of the group's maps. And I think that may not work with the time schedule. And again, this is just my take on it, and Andrew's and our group's take on it. We think there's definitely an opening there to start working on visualizations, so on some hypotheticals before you see the group presentations, but also being mindful that some of the public plans and the group presentations may actually provide you with some solutions or scenarios that you haven't thought about. I mean, this is a big state. There are a lot of things that are happening here. There are, there isn't just one perfect map, and that's something that I usually tell people on the local level. Sometimes people come into this process and think there is one perfect map that is going to do the right thing for absolutely everybody, and that's not true. There are many, good maps. There are many perfect maps. There are many maps that will do something really great for some area and maybe not so great things for another area, because things are interconnected. And it's really difficult. My colleague Tamina talks about redistricting like, trying to seat a wedding party, where Aunt Gertrude wants to sit here, but doesn't want to sit to, Aunt Mabel, and so forth. It's a difficult process, and, taking advantage of public plans and figuring, just really looking at the solutions, or perhaps the ideas they're coming in with public plans, is a great thing to do before perhaps you start creating your draft maps. But again, that doesn't mean you can't do any work before. And then there's another point about the submitted community of interest maps and geography. It would be really great that if the presenters, and I mentioned this earlier, could pre-identify, submitted communities of interest. And it doesn't go for like group presentations of big maps, perhaps, as much as for like the smaller presentations of communities of interest. So if, the COIs could be pre-identified so that the line drawers can quickly access them and pull them out, so you can look at them in greater detail, that again goes to a smoother process. And, and that also actually goes for the maps. If group presentations are scheduled, the line drawers should presumably have the maps in advance. So, if you want us to do some work on them, if you want us to run some reports on them, or make sure that we have them available to show to you, then we just have to figure out how to load them in advance so that this can be a streamlined and quick process. Again, I'm thinking about shaving off time so that you can have maximum time talking about the substance of the presentation, and you're not waiting for us to find a map, the line drawers to find a map, or a community of interest to be pulled up. So next slide, please. Thank you so much, Andrew, for doing this. And so you've heard the term collaboration. Really, it's a thread through our proposal, and that is because that's what we really believe in. And I think collaborations are what make these projects successful. And, a collaboration is, of course, what we're doing with Haystack. We work together on some projects and, related to data access and so forth. And we realize that we're really good collaborators. So collaborations really, for us, make the world go round. So data management, you have some data management people right now on staff, and we've collaborated with them to bring them up to speed on things, and we just see that going forward, of course, with whoever you're going to bring on. And this is really an important one. And you've heard me talk about just making sure that the files are available. some of these things will have to go hand in hand. We think that probably it makes the most sense if the line drawing team is responsible for the GIS data portion, so anything that's like a GIS file and so forth. And and you're going to get a lot of GIS files, I think, from, again, the COI tool and the online tools and the available GIS softwares that are out there. And we just need to be sure that there is a streamlined process that any GIS file that gets submitted to you that comes into the data management team arrives with us. And we're very happy and looking forward to working with anybody you designate, obviously, to figure out how that stream of communication works best. Once we get the GIS files, we'll be working with you to figure out what we need to do with these data. They, at the very least, need to be processed and then probably integrated, because you're going to want to see them in the greater scheme of things. And then, again, we need to just assign some responsibilities. You know that there will be some PDFs that are coming in, so just static files. And again, maybe the famous napkin will come in with a map. And, we have to figure out what to do with that napkin, and also with the PDFs. And, what should go to the data management team to make accessible. We think it would be a great thing if the data management team could, deal with the PDFs that are submitted, since that's not something that we as line drawers would necessarily work with unless something needs to be digitized. But, that they can be made accessible to the commission and the public very quickly, so that they can have the same weight as other public input that comes in. And then there's this idea of having a statewide COI map, and I am not going to say that this was our idea. I think pretty much everybody on your commission has had that idea. So we are aligned with your idea. Let's figure out how to best do that. I think it's a really great idea to use something like a pin or so to figure out where we have submitted COIs, so that we can figure out where there's a COI desert, where are there no COIs? So what now do we do in those areas? Do we focus more meetings in those areas? Is there going to be more of a push to work with partners in those areas to get the word out? I think these maps, they are just a really great visual tool for all kinds of different reasons. And figuring out how that might work best and how to design something like that. We're, looking forward to working with you on that, and, seeing what works for you and bringing, our experience to this. So, and also, again, developing protocols for evaluating submitted district plans. This kind of goes hand in hand, really, I think, with this idea of who presents in the group meetings. I think there's a little bit of overlap there. So, we're going to have to collaborate with the data management team on a system to publish plans that are, consistent with other testimony, to make sure nothing falls between the cracks. And, just get guidance from you about what you would like to see, figure out, what's possible and in what time frame and so forth. So next slide, please, Andrew. Thank you. Again, Andrew has said this, and I just want to reiterate this. We understand that the we and we draw the lines is not us, it's you. You are the selected and the chosen ones, so we understand that. And so on that note, you direct us, and we see our role as being implementers. So we see you as providing direction, and then we will respond to that by documenting that direction and then publicize the direction. Like, for example, we have an input meeting, and it's pretty clear that, you all come to the decision that, a certain area should really not be split, because you've heard a lot of, feedback on that. We'll make sure we'll write that down, and then, we'll make sure that this gets publicized on the map, whatever we understand you to direct, any direction that you're giving to us. And I think that's a really important one also, to make sure that we're all on the same page, that we don't have miscommunications, and then also that the public can participate. Because just imagine how upset you would be if you're sitting there for like a week and you're developing a map of your area, only to find out later that the CRC has given direction to keep a particular jurisdiction whole, and you have just split it. and you just didn't know about it. So I just think it's a good thing to do all around to work with the public, and it's good for us as line drawers to understand what the direction is, and for you to know that we really understood your direction. So this goes like all over this, transparency and access idea. For us, we can, assess the possibilities based on the direction you're giving. We can provide you with some options. Again, we were talking about visualizations earlier, and this is an important thing. As line drawers, line drawing is a tricky thing. It really is. I mean, even though California, we have ranked criteria, that, those criteria are not easy. So, you just have to think about all these different things when you're putting something together. So for us to, just assess some of these possibilities and bring them to you, give you some options, and then, having you think about them and giving directions about where you would like to go, like any of them, go back to the drawing table and whatnot. This is kind of how we see our role of, doing some preliminary work that just based on efficiency, just for efficiency purposes, needs to be done. And again, we draw the lines means that you all make the decisions and we don't make the decisions. We can give you suggestions, we'll collaborate with you, and that's what we're dedicated to do. Line drawing live and in public whenever possible. I will tell you that there are very, very few consultants that are comfortable with this. And that's what I liked about Haystack when we first started talking, and I think that's what Haystack liked about us, because we like this. We think that this is a great thing to do, especially for independent redistricting commissions. This is where transparency lies. This is the root of everything. This is where, and I'm not saying that this is easy. And it takes time, it takes longer. So, just knowing that all of you are dedicated to this, I think, the more live line drawing we can do, the better. And again, this little sub bullet here goes to, working with multiple, consultants that you either already have on staff or will have on staff, like, your streaming and videographers and so forth, to make sure that this can be, viewed properly and people can participate. Again, it's not always going to be possible. Not all of this work can be done in public. I've outlined already the work that may go into, assessing some possibilities and providing options. But, again, one more time, whatever is not done in public, we are, of course, committed to presenting every option, everything that we've done to you. And I think our software is set up to provide, transparent records and so forth. So I think any work that would be done between meetings, just again for efficiency reasons, might best be done with subcommittees. And you're already mostly set up for this. So this is just our idea of what could happen. So obviously, it's just an idea. And, a technical subcommittee could perhaps work with the line drawers to work with them on how the work is being done and then report back to the full commission. There's a legal one that's going to be a big one, obviously, about where and how to implement the Federal Voting Rights Act districts, and then regional one. Perhaps commissioners that are assigned to the outreach zones may work with respective line drawers, because obviously you're going to become experts on certain areas. And we view the respective regional line drawers as kind of fulfilling that role on the technical end also. And then continuity, that's just like the overall process, administration, and so forth. That's, I think, also something that you already have in place. And, some of your subcommittees may just be able to pivot and take some of this work on. After input hearings, this is also something that I've touched on. You could provide some broad direction, for example, to the line drawers. And then again, these directions could be summarized and made publicly available. And those directions can then be used to create some visualizations and then be perhaps incorporated in the draft maps if you agree that these visualizations work for you. Or we can use these visualizations and just as a starting off point, a jumping off point to develop a map that may work for you. Some of these visualizations, I can tell you this from experience. I mean, I've worked with visualizations for a long time, and some of them are probably not going to make a lot of sense. And, and you're going to hear from the public about it. And that's part of it. You're going to put this out there and you figure out what works. You figure out what works for you, and the public is going to let you know what works for them. And then, you come to some sort of an agreement on where the lines go. So it's an interesting process, definitely. And then finally, training. I think training is critical for everybody who's on the team to make sure that we have, good collaborations, good communications. Like, for example, how is live line drawing going to work? Getting a couple of the line drawers in there and actually, showing you how this works and having you ask questions. This is an interesting training to have, and I think you all enjoy it. And the handoffs are really interesting, and that's also something where you may be interested in. You may want to have a separate training on that, or maybe we'll roll it into the first live line drawing training. And then finally, how are these visualizations constructed? And really the sky's the limit on this one. And we would ask you to, of course, just let us know where you feel like you need training, and then we'll design it and we'll present it to you. This is going to be our last slide, I think. Yes, and last but definitely not least, this really by some accounts should have probably been the first slide. So, it's the collaboration with the Federal Voting Rights Act Council. And I know you're looking at applications now, and, obviously we'll work with whoever you will choose. We've, worked with quite a few people in that field already. And, Haystack has worked with some of the people there, and we've also worked with some of the people that have applied. So there's not going to be many surprises for us. And, I think determining an approach to Federal Voting Rights Act assessment and implementation really will rely on working with council. And, the council is going to drive this process. Obviously, they are going to be the expert on it. But we have some assumptions, and those are that we'll have a very close working relationship, and that this will be an iterative process. And for example, the line drawers could identify some areas of potential Section 2 districts, Federal Voting Rights Act districts, early in the process. I mean, we know we have the CVAP data, citizen voting age population data are out already, and some of this work can be front-loaded. And then beginning with some large pockets, figuring out where these areas may be, communicate those to council perhaps, wait for racially polarized voting analysis and some direction, and then figure out some general options. I mean, we assume that, council is going to talk to you, and then we will get direction from you on what to do. And then we'll kind of go back and forth and figure out, how to implement this. In between, all of that is that we'll wait for direction from you regarding the implementation. We'll assess perhaps some more detailed options. Some of this is real, like fine-tuned work. And then, work with the subcommittee, perhaps, if you choose to go that way, and definitely council, and kind of go back and forth a little bit, present some options to the commission, and then, districts are refined, perhaps tested, and then perhaps integrated into the larger map. And one of the questions you may have to consider is whether the Federal Voting Rights Act Council is responsible for guidance on the other criteria, because that's not the only criterion you have, of course. So, and then our last slide is, we thank you very, very much for your time and for considering our proposal. And I know I said we a lot, and I don't mean to be presumptuous here, okay, just kind of flipped out that way. And we wish you a happy redistricting, and we're available for any questions you may have. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karin, and thank you, Andrew, for a great presentation. We're going to take a 15-minute break. So we're going to take a 15-minute break now, and then come back to questions and answers after that. So we'll be back at 11:10 for questions and answers.
Great.
Okay, welcome back. With that, I will turn it over to Commissioner Anderson, who will be leading our question and answer period.
Great. Thank you, Chair. So at this point, basically it's open to the commissioners for any questions that they'd like to propose to the group. And I would like to say thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. It's certainly well filled the hour and was well worth it. Thank you. Commissioner Ahmad?
Thank you, and thank you to Q2 as well as Haystack, slipped my mind. Thank you, Karin and Andrew, for your wonderful presentation. I was particularly interested in the proposed plan, which I understand are just ideas at this point. The aspect around data management, as I sit with Commissioner Turner on the data management subcommittee, I just wanted to gain some understanding in some additional ideas you all might have in regards to that aspect as we move forward. So particularly, what role does the data manager on the team that you had outlined, what does their role look like? And then additionally, how would you foresee a data manager from our side on staff at CRC complementing or supplementing the responsibilities of that line drawer?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question, Commissioner Ahmed. I think that those are two different roles, really. When we say data manager, data security, it really is about internal data management for us to make sure that we are all safe and secure, that our files are properly backed up, that we have files available to us internally that we need. So as you know, there's actually 5 line drawers that we're proposing to bring on, plus perhaps some more mapping support. And depending on what people are working on, there are the handoffs to consider and so forth. So people may need to have access to files at certain times, and we need to make sure that these files are secure, that after every meeting everything is properly backed up and so forth. I think your data management team deals with much more than that, perhaps. So I don't know if your data management team is also charged with providing overall security, because that's kind of more of a specialized IT function, which is really what Guancheng is, an expert in. And of course, he also used to work at Stable Database, so he really understands like large databases and large data sets and protocols and whatnot. But so I'm not entirely sure how you are really envisioning that role for your data management team. We know that we need to be able to interface with them. I think their role is larger with respect to the file types that they're working with, because I think they're going to have, the public input that's not geographic to deal with, perhaps, posting things, making sure that things are available to you, the commissioners, when you need it. And we see our little piece as being the geographic input piece. Having said that, I think there's also a little bit of collaboration there in terms of potential collaboration, depending on who you bring on with, who you want us to work with, if it goes that way. But with making sure that files that are submitted are indexed in a particular way that are perhaps more easily accessible. I think one of the things that this entire team brings to the table is that we understand longitudinal data sets, and that's and I know some of you have dealt with longitudinal data. That's a totally different ballpark than just getting one data set and having to make sure that that works and is understandable and properly indexed. So we may be able to interface with your data managers and assist in naming conventions and so forth. But I think that's basically the difference. And I hope that answered your question. Of course, it's also something we could talk about for a really long time. So.
Yeah, no, definitely that does provide some insights. And as you all know, if you've been watching our meetings, we haven't fully fleshed out that aspect. So we were really hoping to get insights from our applicants for the line drawer position to see how we can best make a very robust process overall. And just one follow-up question I had. I saw in the proposal that the preferred tool is CalPERS Maptitude for redistricting. Is there any significant difference between using that tool and the COI tool in terms of drawing those lines, whether it come from public testimony meetings? I personally don't know Maptitude well enough to be able to identify any differences. So if you could help me understand what the major differences are, just so we're all on the same page, that would be great.
Of course, thank you. Let me take the COI tool aspect and then I'll hand it over to Andrew to talk about the caliper aspect. So the COI tool is really not a line drawing tool, right? It's I sometimes refer to it as a one-trick pony, and I hope that that doesn't sound dismissive, because I think that's actually the strength of the tool, is that it does one thing and it does it very simply and it's super easy to understand and use and all that. Line drawing software, that's a totally different ballpark. So essentially the COI tool is really just to define COIs, and it's not for line drawing. For line drawing, you have to have data sets and all kinds of stuff, and you actually have to put things together. For the COI tool, you're just like creating your community of interest and you're sending it off to the commission. And I'll let Andrew talk about why, and we talked about this a lot, why we were thinking of using CalPERS Maptitude for redistricting software. And this is internal. So this would be the line drawers using it. Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah, and one of the big reasons that we use Maptitude, or we're suggesting to use Maptitude, is because of the ability to take snapshots in Arizona, and that helps with the transparency aspect. And this sort of ties into your initial question about our data security person, is to make sure that we are backing up everything at the end of the night, that any changes that are made, I think we had a total 40,000 plus different snapshots of the maps in Arizona throughout the process, something probably very similar that we will see in California, if not many more. But that's one of the reasons that we like Maptitude, is because of the ability to have the snapshots, have them available. If there's ideally we're not going back and looking at them, but if we need to go back in time to say, all right, how do we decide on this sort of this line change, or why did this line go here? We have the ability to do that. And then just one other thing that I think we want to, besides recording every change with Maptitude, I think one other thing on the data security is we take PII, personal identifiable information, very seriously, and we would work with your data person to make sure anything that's publicly submitted, that people's names, phone numbers, addresses are retracted properly before that information gets out into the public. So we take that extremely seriously.
Yeah, and if I may add, my co-presenter Jamie just texted me that I should point out that the COI tool also relies on an internet connection, and in public meeting, we may, if we're using Maptitude for redistricting, actually the database may be on the local computer, so you don't have to send the lines over the web, which otherwise, that little spinning wheel, that can become quite hypnotic. It's a big state.
Thank you, Commissioner Forciari.
Yeah, thank you for the proposal and your presentation. Really appreciate all the hard work behind putting something like that together. I have two questions. The first question is, do either of your organizations have other line drawing jobs going on right now? And if so, how would you guys manage sort of prioritizing the work in the case there might be some conflicts or anything?
Yeah, maybe I should take the first stab at this, Andrew, if that's okay. Mm-hmm. So Q2 we have a few contracts, some of them in the works, and a couple of them signed. And the only one really that kind of overlaps with this project, or would overlap with this project, is a county where all we're doing is helping them with training of a commission. And so this is really just a few meetings and kind of helping them sketch out the process. So this is a county that has an advisory commission, and we're just helping with basically the materials, and it has a few meetings. I think it's a total of maybe 7 meetings or so. And they have like roughly the same deadlines that you have, whatever that deadline may turn out to be. And then we have a couple of other small jurisdictions. One is a commission that we also worked with the last time. They are not, they don't have to be ready for the primary. So all the other clients, they have to be ready for the general election. So it doesn't coincide with the work that's going to be done for this particular commission. So that's all we have at this point going on. And I don't anticipate a whole lot more happening.
And I would second that. And then the one project that, full disclosure, we did apply to for the Michigan, they have an independent commission there as well. And Q2 Haystack teamed up to apply there. And there's other members of the team that will be, that are currently not on the California project that will be, if we were to get the Michigan project, and we are finalists in Michigan. So their significant amount of their time would be dedicated to Michigan.
Commissioner Yee.
I had one more question, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I know you, Andrew, your firm does analytics. I know, Karin, you have a great deal of experience with data. I mean, how do you guys envision sort of helping us make sense of all this input we're getting? And I mean, we've been talking about hiring a data analyst, but I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on how this team would help us, think through the data, think through what it's telling us, think through what we can glean out of the data to be more effective in executing on our job.
And I'll start, and then Karin, you can jump in. But I think that's a great question, and we as Haystack as a firm deal with big data sets all the time. And I think one big thing that I like to tell clients is we help tell a story. So there's a lot of data, and there needs to be a story that needs to be told. And we work with clients to make sure that they understand what the data is. In Arizona, what we did last time is we worked with the commission staff to set up a system to categorize every single piece of data that, any comment that came in, and worked with the commission staff to set that up and implement that. And that was very important. We worked with the legal counsel as well, because they needed a lot of that information to preserve and have ready in case there were any court cases that information was available. So that's one thing that I think we could work closely with the CRC staff, and we have that ability to deal with large data sets. We deal with the census data all the time. We have our firm has a national voter file. We have a consumer file of 250 million Americans. So we're used to taking large data sets and making that more accessible and understandable to the client.
Yeah, and just to add to that, and thank you very much, Andrew, there's not much that I have to add to that. I think just making sure that the data are available to you. I think whoever you bring in as a data manager, again, I see this as a collaboration, would be happy to sit down with you and kind of go through what your thoughts are currently and give you some feedback. Because most data management firms or people that are qualified to do data management they haven't worked on redistricting. I mean, that's generally the problem you have when you're dealing with redistricting, is that there's very few people out there that have worked on it because there's not that much opportunity to work on it, right? So there may be some overlap with data sets that they have worked on in the past, but when we're talking about communities of interest and, just input coming left and right about different topics, this categorization, classifying of data, coding data, which of course many of you are very familiar with because you've also worked on data. Anybody who's done a data research project on, with qualitative data has dealt with this. This is something we also did with the last commission. I think it can be much improved, and we're very happy to figure out what needs to be done and collaborate with you and whoever comes in to make that work.
Commissioner Yee.
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. Wow, I'm actually getting excited about line drawing. I know it's still a little whiles off, but very inspiring. Two questions. First question has to do with data management, and this is something we've discussed on the commission ourselves, and it may become more obvious once we're actually, receiving public input. But so some public input will have GIS information with it, and other, input will not. So as you're imagining it, the line drawer will have a role in public input that has GIS information. But it seems to me this creates two different paths for the information. You have COI tool input submissions, then you have napkin or just narrative, just emails. And I'm trying to figure out, how do we treat them all? How do we get them all together? And I guess that's really the commission's responsibility, ultimately, probably through its data management team, to integrate that and give us everything that has to do with Reading, and that will have come from a lot of different sources. So I'm trying to, so I'm wondering, from your point of view, the line drawer staff, what's its particular role then in that flow? And how do you, if let's say you're pre-digesting 200 submissions about Reading and characterizing it, well, that's treating that data differently than other submissions about Reading that did not come through the COI tool, right? So I'm wondering how you see that, and what your thoughts are about how to approach that. And then I have a very completely different question after that.
Yeah, so if I may take a stab at that, I think that is that is such an important topic, because I think submitting input to the CRC shouldn't be a popularity contest, in a perfect world. So I think we've all seen, some people, some neighborhoods in particular, perhaps more, disadvantaged neighborhoods, where perhaps one person is able to put a submission together about where their community of interest is and send it off, and that commission, in whatever form that submission, in whatever form it comes in, should probably have the same weight as somebody who is able to go on Twitter and say, hey, here's this map, everybody vote on it, and they have 8,000 followers and they all give them the thumbs up. Then the question is for you, how do I weigh these things? Does one have more worth than the other? I think one of the answers to that question is that you have to be attuned to that fact, that this may happen. I think we can help in taking some of the information that you're, for example, getting in written format, where people talk about their community of interest and they did not use the COI tool. We have mapping support available. The technical term for that internally is baby mappers. And this is the next round of mappers that we're developing, and they can help with digitizing things from public input, for example. So there are various ways by which we can assist with that. When we are talking about, for example, doing a pin map of the entire area, and you're seeing that you have a lot of submissions from one particular area, a lot of it is probably going to be the same. So you're going to have to weigh that information. I mean, I think that's one of the really difficult things that commissioners have to do, right? Is to weigh that information, figure out what is the value of it, how does it factor into the greater scheme of things, and then, compare that to other information that's come in. And you'll also see where there's perhaps not a lot of information, and you can still take a look at that and see, do I need to support that somehow? Do I need to do more outreach? Do we need to go into this community? Do we need to, talk to our outreach partners and so forth? So I think it's in the collaboration. I think we can help again with digitizing some of these things and make them available to you. I think it's important that you have the information available when you need it. And we most certainly can help with that. And with that, Andrew, you want to take it?
Yeah, and I think the key thing, as you were saying, Karen, is making sure that the commission prioritizes, what you want. So if you're hearing a bunch of comments and you're looking at it and it's about a particular area, if you have 200 comments on Reading and say, all right, could you take these and do a map? That's something that we could work with you, and it's driven by the commission and what is your prioritization. So you're right. And a good example, I think, is in Arizona, where we had a lot of people last time, and we had who came to public hearings, and they said, we want two maps or two congressional districts on the border with Mexico. There's other people who came and said, we want 3 congressional districts. And the commission looked at us and they said, could you map out these 2 scenarios? Could you show us what these 2 look like? So I think that's a really good example where it's driven by you. We obviously would work with the data management staff and help visualize what you guys are, what the commission is prioritizing.
Go ahead, Commissioner Yee, with question number 2. Or
question number 2. So this is for Karen. So you're here with your Q2 hat, but you also have a statewide database hat. And so I'm trying to think as a member of the public how I would perceive that. And I'm not thinking of conflict of interest so much as, wow, that's quite a bit of role concentration in a couple of people, you and Jamie and so on. I'm just wondering what you would say to the public in terms of having both those roles, which you also did in 2011 and, endured. I don't think there was any, I'm not aware of any criticism that came up about that, but just wondering, once again, as you place yourself in both these roles, how you wish to be perceived. Also wondering how, kind of a follow-up to that, how things might be different now that you're bringing Haystack in, how that compares to 2011.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yeah, it is a little bit of a juggling process. I think one way that I differentiate is that I'm always very clear what my role is at any particular time. Am I here as statewide database or am I here as, your consultant? The interesting thing about statewide database is that as soon as the data are released, our workload drops dramatically. So we're super busy, right now, maybe a little bit more busy because of all the things that have been happening with census, of course, but our workload will be dropping dramatically at that point. I should also tell you that I currently have, I think, 57 days of vacation that I have to take at UC, and clearly nobody is going anywhere. Holiday markets in Europe are not going to be happening, and I'm very happy to spend my vacation with all of you. So I would like to say that. It's not unusual for, academics, people that work at UC to also, do consulting work. And I know you've had some people, of course, on other, consulting roles present to you, and it's the same for them as it is to us. I think I have a unique skill set that is, was kind of partially developed because of statewide database, but really a lot of it has to do with my own academic work. My, quote unquote, obsession with communities of interest came out of my academic work. I've been, working on communities of interest since 1997. that was work that I did while I was in the PhD program. I wrote my master's on it and so forth. So that has very little to do with Stay by Database, because it really informs other pieces of redistricting work. In terms of a conflict of interest, I have looked at it, others have looked into it. There really is no conflict of interest because the Stay by Database is a publicly available data set. Whatever I know, everybody knows. I don't have access to any data that you don't have access to, or the general public has access to. And I think, it's a busy time, but, as academics, I think we understand how busy we can all be when we're on projects, So I would actually say, now that you've got me thinking about it, I think my my academic work and my redistricting works really benefited the Stay by Database and the way that we make the data available. In particular, if you're looking at the Fair Maps Act, and I'm now going a little bit off on a tangent, but now cities and counties have to use the Stay by Database for line drawing, for example. And the fact that I've actually worked with cities and counties and I understand who may be accessing these data and how they're looking at these data is informing the way that we're going to be presenting the data at Stay by Database. So I think that, the information that I've gathered and the work that I've done as a consultant or as an academic or, pro bono, much pro bono, has really benefited that project. So I hope that answered your question, Commissioner Yi.
It does. And then maybe some thoughts on bringing Haystack in this time around.
Oh yeah, Haystack. So yeah, this was an interesting one too. I mean, this is a big project that you all have in mind, and we didn't have the capabilities of doing it by ourselves, but we also thought we would benefit from bringing some partners on that perhaps have other experience. I mean, Jamie and I were basically, and Jamie, Tamina, and I, we talk to each other and figure things out. Sometimes it's good when you talk to somebody else to figure things out, because there's some perspectives that we hadn't looked at, perhaps technological solutions that we hadn't looked at. And in walks Andrew and his team with this fantastic idea of basically replicating the Stay by Database on a national level. And as kind of, for me, it was of course love at first sight, because the Stay by Database is like my everything, as you know. And being able to work with people that I had already heard a lot about. I'd heard of their work in Arizona. I knew that they had done a good job. They basically used the same methodologies that we had used in California in terms of, transparency and so forth. And having access to more seasoned line drawers, to Andrew's, expertise, to having, a company that knows a lot about big data and, data analytics in the way that we in our little niche perhaps don't know about. It just seemed like a real asset. And, looking at the fact that they have done transparent work and they're moving, they have their redistricting hats on in a completely nonpartisan way, that just made sense to me. So, we were working well together on the Redistricting Data Hub. I was working with one of the Haystack people at the MGGG voting rights conference 2 years ago, the Voting Rights Project, where I was teaching. And, so there was a lot of overlap there already, and there just seemed to be a synergy.
Thank you. Commissioner Toledo, did you have a?
Yes, thank you. It's actually concerning just Haystack and just questions about impartiality and conflict of interest specifically. I did see your disclosure regarding the Congressman Ro Khanna, South Bay Congress member. I'm just curious as to, I did read your statement, and I'm curious as to the perception, how because the commission, as you know, has the requirement to be impartial and to do its work in an impartial manner. Given that your firm has worked with many political candidates, does work with many political candidates, many of them on the Democratic side. How have you and how would you ensure impartiality in all of the work that you do, and ensure that there's no conflict of interest as it's defined in the statutes?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think what we have done in the past, in terms of, and that was the same question that we faced in Arizona when we went and did the project there in 2011, and I think that is why we are so big on transparency. The software we choose, has the ability to take snapshots with every single line change. We are committing that while we were working on this project, that we don't do any California, the team that's working on this project doesn't do any California political work, because we want to make sure that we don't want to even present it. It may be unrelated, but we want to be able to show that we are not, showing any favoritism or any favors to any political candidates, and that's something that we think, and the big thing is we're not off mapping in a dark room at night. We're doing this in the public, and we're taking direction from each of you. The 14 of you you're our bosses, and you're the ones who are telling us where to put the lines, where to move the lines. So that's something that we are fully committed to, full transparency. And by doing it in the past, having a track record of this, I think is very important. And when it comes to redistricting, the fact that we've been brought in to help set up what the equivalent is the statewide database on a national level, as a nonpartisan organization, that's something that was very important. And one of the reasons that we were chosen for that is that we could, when it comes to redistricting, we have a nonpartisan hat completely on.
Follow up to that. So when we signed on to be on the commission, we had to give a 10-year, had to commit to not to run for office for 10 years, not to be appointed to office, because of the possible perception about impartiality and conflicts of interest. I'm just curious, I didn't see this in the documents. Are you also committing to not working with politicians or elected officials who potentially might be, where districts might be redrawn through this process over the next 10 years, or just during the line drawing process?
We had talked about it just during the line drawing process. Part of it is being a firm that does redistricting when every once a decade, when state commissions come together. If we could do redistricting all the time, I think there's a lot of members on our team that we would only do that. And part of this is being a relatively small business as well. Like there's times where we can't, there's times where it's a business decision where we choose clients. So that's something that we were fully committed to doing it throughout. And we understand that there's litigation that often happens, and so we are committed to making sure nobody on our team does political work in California for that. And I really hope it doesn't go for 10 years for your sakes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there, because I do have several conflicts of issues items to address. Are there other questions by the commissioners that aren't just the conflict of issue items at this point? Commissioner Kutagawa and Commissioner Kennedy.
It's not conflict of interest. Did you want to ask yours first?
No, actually, please go ahead with anything that isn't, then we'll sum up with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Karin, thank you very much, and Andrew, thank you. I do appreciate your presentation and also your proposal. I actually have two questions. One is there's one that has a subset, and then the other one's a completely separate question. I'm just kind of curious because you mentioned that in 2010, I guess the last CRC was challenged in organizing the deluge of the written public comments, and we had heard this as well too. I am just kind of curious what happened. I mean, was that data not used? And how is that going to be? And I think this is kind of a different take on what Commissioner Yee had also asked, but I think I'm asking this mostly also because we've been talking a lot about language access as well too. And we're going to be translating, public input, whether it's written or submitted through obviously the COI tool. We're going to be encouraging as broad and as wide of submissions that we can receive, through different means. I think this commission has made that kind of commitment that we want to that, and it was reflected also in the proposal as well too. But I think about when translations also occur too. There's some words that just don't translate easily from one language to another, and I'm kind of curious as to how that's going to complicate what you're going to be doing in terms of really, I guess, I think the words that you used was categorization and coding, the data, like, so that it's going to be usable for us in a way that, as Andrew had said, it tells a story that we can then use for the line drawing. So I'd be interested to hear how you would address that. Is that even on the radar screen at this point right now?
Yeah, thanks for those questions. I'll start with the second one. And I think that we would need to work with you and also with the translators, obviously, and probably also with the public to make sure that, kind of terminology issues are resolved properly. I totally agree with you. I've run into this in the past. I mean, there could definitely be some tricky situations, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I have the answers to all of those, but I think that's something that we all have to work on. It's not going to just affect our work; it's going to affect your work also. The timeliness of these translations is going to be a factor. Like who do you bring on? I mean, that what's happening with the COI tool is that it's going through community review, and when you look at translation companies and figure out who you want to bring on, you're going to be looking also at some translation companies that offer community review, which takes longer. So some people offer it, some people don't offer it. Some people don't offer all of the languages. So this is going to be an interesting one. And again, that this would be something where we need to work together. And I agree with you also that it can affect categorization. I mean, I am not proposing that we, categorize everything. I would say, some broader categories that we work out with the specific subcommittee perhaps, and then, bring to the full commission to see how the full commission thinks about it, whatever is most useful for you. And then, just to have these data a little bit better available. So going to what happened in 2011 was, it's just redistricting. Here we go. Everybody always seems to be getting thrown some sort of a curveball. And, in 2011, there was no time, there was no money. There was just, it was the first commission. So essentially everything was, it was literally inventing the wheel. So, that commission hadn't really thought about the fact that they might get this much input. In fact, I still remember the first input meeting that commission had, and we were sitting there and we were all worried that we would travel all the way to the meeting location and nobody might show up. I mean, we have no idea whether there was any interest, and then all of a sudden it was a lot of interest. And then, we had to deal with the exact opposite concern, which was like, oh my goodness, now what do we do with all of this input, right? So a lot of these things were developed as a response to what we were seeing on the ground. And I mean, I would say that that's what you also want in a redistricting consultant, is somebody who can basically pivot with you depending on what happens, that they can come up with a solution. Because I still remember Guan Cheng, who is on this project, he put a KOI database together on the fly, essentially, or just a database that could log input. And the commissioners did have access to it, so the input was, was considered, but it was perhaps not as pretty as if we had been able to, front load it. And it didn't have all of the input in it. So there were different different streams of input that were in different locations. And again, there wasn't a dedicated data management team. We had no money, we had no time. So, we basically strung it together, and I'm pretty confident that all of the input was considered by the commissioners, but a lot of it also required for, the consulting team to remind the commissioners or to point out to the commissioners that perhaps there was a piece of input that they either didn't have time to read, or, that just came in, or that had been submitted a long time ago, and that they perhaps wanted to take into consideration. So, again, it was an all hands on deck kind of situation. And and I think you have some time, you have a better infrastructure, you have a bigger team, and there's a lot of know-how on this commission. So I think putting everybody's heads together and coming up with something good is really going to benefit this process. I hope that answered your question, Commissioner Kutagawa.
Yes, it did. Thank you very much, and I appreciate that. That's helpful to know, and I think it's something that we're also quite conscious about in terms of the reasons why we're considering the data management kind of system that we're looking at, and also the data analysis. I have one more question, if I can ask, and I was also quite interested in understanding your suggestions around the regional teams, kind of similar to the zone methodology that we've taken, so that we ensure that the entire state will have someone to turn to. I am kind of curious as to can you explain a little bit more what you have in mind? Because I was reading some of the other areas where commissioners are going to be liaising with your team, if this is successful, your team in terms of whether it's the finance and administration, whether it's what's currently the line drawer RFP subcommittee, which could then morph into, them doing something related to it. I'm going to perhaps think that there may be other subcommittees that'll get pulled in, including the zone team. So can you explain a little bit more what you see around, like even the zone or the regional liaisons that the zone teams will have in terms of working with your zone or regional teams?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for that question. I know it's a unique approach, but it's an approach, that we've at least tested, and it works. So California is an incredibly large place, and it is, if the last input process is any, gives us any suggestion or any indication about how much input we're going to get this time, it's going to be so much more, just because, you're out there, you're promoting, we have different tools and so forth, all of this. So having a mapper who becomes an expert on a section of the state is going to give you more quality, I think, in putting the maps together. I think assuming that a mapper can become an expert on, the input and the kinds of concerns that are perhaps in some of the areas of the state, like I'll just grab a couple of points out of my hat from last time. We were talking about watershed. We were talking about, small counties working together on, perhaps certain agricultural issues. We were talking about coastal access, issues that are very predominant around the coast and what's happening there. There were so many different facets that affected the different regions, and being able to go to one regional expert, quote unquote, regional line drawer, and asking them for advice and having them be able to jump basically from plan to plan to plan, where they can, so by which I mean from assembly to Senate to Congress and so forth. It can happen many different ways because they already know what you did in the assembly. So if you, for example, said in the assembly, oh, we're going to try to split X area because of these particular considerations, but we don't want to do that in another plan, they can remind you of that. They can tell you whether it's possible. They will have mapped it on a smaller unit of analysis and on a larger unit of analysis. So that's essentially the idea. As Andrew said when we were looking at this map, this is not set in stone. I think it makes a lot of sense to have one person assigned to LA because Los Angeles is like its own country, really, in many different ways. It is super large, and it has pretty much every concern you could possibly consider. And there are a lot of opportunities, a lot of challenges there. And having one person just focus on that is going to take all of their time to become an expert on it. And then also remember, there will be a voting rights council who will work with the mappers and with you, obviously. And not everybody needs to be in the same room for the conversation about Los Angeles. So it's as much about knowledge as it is about efficiently deploying this team and making sure that somebody is available as a contact point for the commissioners that perhaps are working in that region. And, we tried to stick to your outreach zones because it seemed like you've organized yourselves around those. And I agree with you, looking at some of these subcommittees, figuring out who needs to be and should be in the room, and, maybe modifying this a little bit is a really good idea. And obviously we're open to that. And I hope that answered your question.
Great. Thank you. I'm just seeing where our time is getting shorter here. Commissioner Kennedy, I know you have some questions, and then I might ask a few more and wrap this up.
I only have one question, and this is something that I had put out on the table for discussion several months ago during the commission meeting. I just wanted to get your thoughts on possible value. We're talking about how to make best use of our time, particularly before the census data reach us. We know that once the census data reach us, the whole pace and focus, everything will shift. But before the data reach us, do you see value, and how would you see best making use of soliciting public comment on the existing 2010 cycle districts? We're not asking them anything about the future districts that we're going to draw, where we would essentially ask them, what was your reaction? How do you feel about what changes do you think should have been made to the work product of the 2010 commission? Is that worthwhile? Could it be worthwhile to us?
That's a really good one. So let's talk about the congressional map. Let's start with that. We are going to know in April whether we're even going to have the same, number of districts. And so that particular map may go into a totally different category with respect to this conversation because, we just don't know. I think sometimes people really like to, a lot of people like to focus on something, comment on something that's already in place, right? So if you already have a map and you ask people, well, what works and what doesn't work, that could potentially work. I have not personally tried that out. I think we need to consider that we have population changes that may not make it possible to respond to those comments. So you may run the danger of kind of inadvertently suggesting that you'll be able to, quote unquote, fix a particular problem in a district that you may not be able to do once you see the data because the districts have to change. So, on some level, it could be a good idea because you have something that people can comment on. On the other hand, it could backfire on you because you may be creating expectations that you can't meet. But, And then also the question is, how much will you rely on those, and can you rely on those districts? Again, there are some voting rights concerns probably that may not have been there the last time. So it's something I think you have to carefully think through. But going to the first part of your question, which is how to utilize that period of time, perhaps that month before the statewide database puts the data out. I mean, you will have the PL94 data. And I think that you may want to have a conversation about starting with the unadjusted data and using the unadjusted data to do some visualizations. Because you can make some assumptions, presumably, about which areas are going to be affected by the prisoner reallocation most tremendously. Because remember, the big areas that are affected are the ones where the inmates are removed from, right? And then I'm thinking of it as a sprinkling of people throughout the state of California, with, of course, some communities being more affected than others. But the biggest effect is going to be on the area that gives us those populations. So I think you could make some reasonable assumptions and perhaps get a starting point that people can actually comment on using visualizations, and then just not drawing, obviously, because you don't have the adjusted and the official data. But that could give you a head start on some of the conversations, and then people do have something to focus on where they can give you feedback. It's just an idea. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Kennedy? Thank you.
Commissioner Sadwani?
Yes, thank you. And thank you to both of you for your presentation and your proposal. I enjoyed reading them and hearing more about the details of it. I wanted to go back and ask you both a little bit more about the application that you mentioned to the Michigan Commission, and get a better sense of, if you were to get that contract, how you would split your time between California and Michigan, and what that would look like, as well as thinking more about, certainly there aren't exact conflicts of interest between California and Michigan. Are there appearances of conflict, however? Are there appearances of conflict to the role of independent commissions if the same firm is ultimately doing redistricting for many of the independent commissions?
I'll start with that. That's a good question, and I think in terms of I think the biggest conflict is going to have to do with timing of meetings and public meetings and public hearings, and that's why we have additional individuals on the team who are not working on California and only working on in the state of Michigan. So we want to make sure that they're separate there, and that we're not stressed out. I mean, there is the time zone advantages where Michigan is 2 hours ahead, so that there's meetings that overlap. There will be some advantages that we could take place there. But I think largely how we were planning to sort of staff the if we were to get Michigan, and again we're not in there. So if we were to get Michigan and California, I think that's something that we have discussed a number of times. And I think the other thing is there's not a lot of redistricting firms out there, because this happens only once every 10 years. Big statewide redistricting in terms of the congressional and the state seats. So I want to make sure that when we're committing to California, we're committing to California, and that's something that we'll work closely with the staff to make sure that we're hitting deadlines. And part of my job as the project manager is to be working with the staff and the appointed people, the appointed commissioners, to make sure our project plan is rolling out smoothly, that address any hiccups that may come up. We don't anticipate any, but want to make sure that we have open lines of communication, that we're continuously addressing the needs for in the event of both states, that we're addressing the needs for both states. But we are fully committed to and making sure we're not stretched too thin, and we have plans in place to bring on additional people if they're needed.
Yeah, and thank you, Andrew, for that. And I would like to add to that you know, all these applications come out pretty much at the same time, and you know, we knew that our team was pretty uniquely qualified to work with an independent commission, but you know, we don't take anything for granted. We may feel we're really qualified. We don't know what everybody's looking for. So yeah, so obviously we, you know, didn't just put all of our eggs in one basket and we applied to another state. We, you know, talked about it in advance, and, you know, Q2 will be taking the lead on California if we, you know, if you decide to hire us, and Haystack will be taking the lead on Michigan if, you know, if it turns out that way. And so we just want to make sure that you understand that you really do have our full, you know, you got us if you want us. We're here for you. And again, as Andrew said, we all have a larger team. We did not put the entire teams that we have available internally onto this project. We pulled the people that we thought would work the best. And so, you know, we put it together that way for a reason. It's we're looking at this very strategically. Who can handle X? Who has the qualifications for X? And, you know, Michigan is a very tiny little state compared to California. It's really a totally different ballpark. You know, you're looking at, you know, LA, of course, is large, but you know, Michigan, basically, in terms of population, is like the population of LA. So, so it's a different ballpark. But I just, you know, I want to assure you that you have our full attention.
And just one additional thing, and I think we put this in our proposal, that we understand this isn't a 9 to 5 job. We understand that there's going to be meetings that go very late into the night, start very early in the morning, and you know, we committed in the proposal to, you know, as the project manager, to, you know, be available to you 7 days a week, because there's going to be questions that come up on the weekend about something. So we just want to make sure that we're available to you during those times, both on times and off times, that we're addressing your needs.
And thank you. That's very helpful. And if I may just ask a little bit more pointed of a question regarding disclosure, and I think this will begin to weave into some of the questions Commissioner Anderson might have prepared for you also. Of course, your firms do other work. You have completed, to the best of my ability, I can tell, a lengthy disclosure form for the RFP. That, of course, is a disclosure of those projects you've had in the past. As we move forward over the next year or beyond, if as need be, is it something that we can ask of you to continue to disclose any projects that you take on and clients that you might take on during this time period for the purposes of full transparency?
I'm speaking for Haystack, 100% yes.
Yes, absolutely. For us, obviously, yes.
Very good. Thank you. Commissioner Anderson?
Yeah, that does dovetail exactly into, there are essentially 2 items. And the good news is I have only a very few questions because most of the commissioners have picked everything up. So mine are very specific and very pointed, and it does deal with the disclosure. And specifically, there are 2 sections in the proposal itself which deal with disclosure. One of which is there are 2 different attachments to the proposal. One is your confidentiality and non-disclosure statements. And it definitely says in there that you're basically the non-disclosure, the non-disclosure statement essentially says, everything that you're doing belongs to the commission, and you acknowledge that. We actually do need that form to be filled out by not just the president of the company, but it actually all of project personnel. And I'm sure that was sort of an oversight on your part, but and also the project personnel as they get added need to actually be able to sign that form. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that was an oversight attachment. I believe it was attachment H, and today we were pointing to that, and we are gathering for each of not only the current staff, but we will do that for anybody that we add on as well, to disclose that.
Great, and those are lead positions, obviously. Great, and then the other item is, and it's called attachment D, and this is the full disclosure. It's actually conflict of interest. I take that back. And it does have to, just from the public's perspective, most of the public is aware that we have as commissioners this 10-year history of anything we've done 10 years before. We also have 5 and 10 years in the future. So what we have done in this disclosure is ask you to disclose any and all connections in your previous 10 years, which you've actually been all very diligent about. Thank you very much. It appears everything is there. Hence Commissioner Toledo's question about the Rohana issue. There is one other person which I definitely have to bring up because it would be a bit remiss not to, and it is your John O'Neill, who has done great work on the Arizona districting and then has done marvelous things at the Princeton work, which I won't get into. However, the last 4 years was actually an elected member of the LA County Democratic Party, and a delegate was actually elected as a delegate to the State Democratic Party Central Committee. So do we have that? That's something that I'm glad you disclosed, and I really appreciate that because that was exactly what you're required to do. It is up to the commission to decide, whether what we do with that information. I just want to bring that forward, and I'd like you to be able to comment on what role you thought Mr. O'Neill is doing, and how would he. How could he remain independent? I sort of ask you to comment on that, please.
Yes, and so John O'Neill is going to be a member of the mapping team, and the role that we specifically had envisioned for him is to help merge the maps together. When we talked about the zones, the different zones, and as those maps come together, we wanted to make sure that we had somebody who was going to be able to bring those maps together. Furthermore, John O'Neill is somebody who is the director of the Redistricting Data Hub. So the last 2 years he's been in that role, and carrying out that nonpartisan role very diligently. So I would comment, just note that as well, but wanted to make sure that he is somebody who understands redistricting. Also in his track record is he's done work in Florida, and he and this was a project that he's responsible for the maps that the Florida Supreme Court chose in the state of Florida for both the congressional maps and for the state Senate maps. And that the Florida Supreme Court chose those maps because John O'Neill did those maps in a nonpartisan way. So when it comes to his ability when it comes to redistricting, he has a proven track record of being nonpartisan and would continue that on this team as well.
Yeah, and if I could perhaps add to this, Andrew, about the role that John would have. We just figured, it's COVID. and we better just look for somebody who, add somebody to the team who could be an emergency mapper if, something happened, if somebody got sick or so. So essentially it spoke to the continuity of the project. So he's kind of, like a floater, so to speak, should something happen to somebody, which we, obviously don't expect, but, it was just built in that way. And as Andrew said, the handoff, so the person that does the handoffs actually doesn't map. This is a person who kind of works and perhaps comes in as a collaborator between the two people, like the LA person and the person that maps the coastline or so, where there is a handoff, and assists them in negotiating how those two maps are put together. We just thought having, another person helping out with that particular technical piece would be a good thing to do. We didn't have that last time. The people, the mappers last time had to figure it out themselves, but we also know that it would be smoother if somebody else were there who has a lot of mapping expertise, who could help them with that. So I think at that point, when John would kick in, that would be the point when, your guidance and your district were already on a map. And it's just making sure that things match. It's kind of like a puzzle, right? So we have these 4 puzzle pieces and then integrating them with each other and then communicating to all of you where there may be issues. So that's just about the technical piece.
Great. Thank you very much. I wanted to give you a chance. Certainly the credentials are very good, and I just wanted to give you a chance to explain the issues involved and the credentials. So I really appreciate that. It's a wonderful presentation. You certainly covered all our bases. I believe answered all our questions. Unless I see another. Commissioner Sinai.
All right, this might be a quick and basic question, but what is a handoff? Just to better understand that.
I apologize, Commissioner Sinai. Thank you for asking that question. Yeah, the handoff is basically how you go from one region that you've mapped to the other region that somebody else has mapped. So it's essentially integrating, and I call it like a handoff, So essentially, I'm now done with LA with this particular very tricky district, and it reaches into somebody else's region and, making sure that that works. So that's the handoff, kind of like a handshake. And I apologize for the completely made up techie term.
All right. At this point, I think we're done. We might thank you very much and excuse you, and the commission might continue on with our discussions.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present, and would be very excited if we were to work with you, each of you. This is an incredible project, and understand what you guys are going through. So would love to be part of the team.
Yes, ditto to all of that. Thank you so much for your time and for talking to us and for considering, our proposal.
Great.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you both very much.
Okay. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
So, Chair, I can turn this over to you, or at this point, we want to, it's now 12:15. I guess we can go till 12:45 before we require a break.
So let's have some discussion now, and then so let's have some discussion around the proposal.
Yeah. So at this point, what we'd like to do is any overall comments, and sort of, I think in your mind, you probably already the criteria, what we've been looking for ultimately out of this is for the presentation is, are they qualified, not qualified, highly qualified, that's sort of a ranking kind of ultimately. And then Commissioner Sadwani and I will give you our recommendations. We'll discuss a little bit about the entire proposal itself, and put the whole package together and make a recommendation. So at this point, you want to let's sort of just discuss about the presentation and the plan itself. And any questions or comments? Sarah, you went on mute.
Oh, sorry. I said, or reactions to the.
So do we, Linda, Commissioner Kutagawa, and then Commissioner Fernandez after that.
I guess just reactions and just in terms of the plan itself. I mean, I did like reading through what they proposed. I thought that they had some great ideas. I will also say that, I guess maybe one of the advantages of having someone like Karin, who's also involved in it, is that they've been listening to our conversations, our discussions as a commission, and I feel like some of the things that we've been grappling with, they've tried to also address in terms of proposing, perhaps maybe not necessarily just a solution, but just some ideas in which some of the things that we're raising as areas in which we want to focus in on was reflected, and I was really happy to see that in the proposal. And so I would just say, I just really appreciated the things that they put down on paper for what they would help to do so that we could accomplish our goals.
Thank you. Commissioner Fernandez and then Commissioner Taylor.
Yes, I agree with Commissioner Kutagawa. I believe they're qualified. It is an advantage because they've been involved already. And I guess I'm just wondering, normally, and maybe this is just part of this process, but normally when we come forward as a subcommittee, we'll say what our recommendation is, and then we discuss it at that point. So I'm just wondering why you didn't give us your recommendation first, and then we can discuss it. So yeah, I don't have any concerns in terms of their qualifications.
Commissioner Sedmani, well, I might jump in. Commissioner Sedmani, did you want to answer that? Because we did discuss that, because yes, that's usually what we would do. We didn't want to prejudice the commission one way or another. So we wanted you to have a look, see what you think. And at this point, I mean, we could just take a straw poll about, qualified, also, it's a little different in that we have the one proposal. Normally, we would be adjourning. We'd consider. We'd be writing down. Okay, what do we think of this presentation? Qualified, well qualified. The different types of essentially ratings, and then we would break and have the next proposal, next presentation. And at which point, then we'd collect those, and Commissioner Sadwani and I would say, now, because in the RFP, there are many components of this, and we have essentially a rating for the rest of the components of the RFP, which we could discuss, and so that's the reason why we're sort of doing it in a staggered step.
So let's go to Commissioner Taylor, hear from him, and then do a straw poll, and at that point, we'll entertain a motion from the commission, a motion or a recommendation from the committee. Commissioner Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. I thought, as a reaction to the presentation, that they spoke to being collaborative and especially agile to be able to suit our needs. And I think that's an extremely important component when we talk about the relationship between data management, data analysis, and interpretation. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. In terms, okay, should we do let's do a straw poll first, just to see where people are, and then we can continue on with the conversation. Everyone who believes this proposal meets the qualifications. I'm not remember the exact language you wanted to use, Commissioner Anderson. I believe it meets the expectations.
Well, actually, it really is. The cutoff line is qualified, and anything above that, does anyone think that they're not qualified?
Or vice versa, does everybody believe that they are qualified? Let's start with that. Does everybody believe that they are qualified? Raise your hand if you do. One. I'm not saying one commissioner raised his hand. Does anybody think that this proposer is not qualified? Raise your hand. Okay, so no one, not. So it looks like we have consensus that the proposal is qualified at this point. Commissioner Fernandez, Commissioner Ahmed, and Commissioner Sinai. And then we'll entertain a motion if there is one on the floor.
Oh, I didn't. I was just saying that I thought they were qualified, but I can submit a motion if you want. That's fine. I was just saying yes, they're qualified.
Okay. Commissioner Ahmed.
Thank you, Chair. I did raise my hand, and I agree that they are qualified to complete the task at hand. I am curious to understand, though, does qualified also mean minimal conflict of interest as well, considering the discussions that we've had with the proposers themselves? My other question is actually related to process. So are we actually voting to potentially hire this applicant today, or are we just trying to get on the same page in terms of whether they are qualified or not?
My understanding is that there is the potential for up or down vote on this applicant today. Okay.
And then in that, I think I need more clarity in terms of what does the negotiation process look like in terms of the plan itself, and who is taking that on our team, and what that timeline looks like as well.
Good question. Commissioner Sidwani and Anderson, do you want to tackle that question?
Well, a couple of thoughts. So in terms of process, and Commissioner Anderson, feel free to jump in here. One of the key steps, had we received multiple proposals, one of the key steps, first steps would have been to identify whether those proposers are qualified or not qualified. And so that's really the piece that we're doing at this point in time. From there, we can then discuss, do we actually want to hire them? My understanding is that we can vote today as to our intent to hire and an intent to develop a contract with them, in which case then we would go forth in advancing that contract. As far as I'm concerned, the plan should not be a part of that contract for the most part. The number of meetings, perhaps the finances, which have not been revealed at this point in time,
True.
are all of the components that we would still have yet to determine. I see Commissioner Anderson shaking her head. So do you have something different in that?
Yeah, but we'll see. Yeah. I just want to, yeah, okay, there we go. The cost portion has been released. It was as part of the contract, as part of the way this works, as soon as we begin talking about the proposers, the cost portion is posted. So at this, really essentially what we would be doing today is saying, yes, we do indeed think this is the qualified. Even if we were at the end of all the different presentations, we would be talking about if someone we thought not qualified at all, we would dismiss that proposal from the group. But then we would be discussing the entire proposal, and at one point then voting on the different people. So what we're doing this time is essentially and the motion would be because we have one proposal. We would like to propose that we intend to award the contract to this particular group. And at that point, and that would be a full up or down vote. Well, we need to discuss it. And as part of those are indeed, what exactly do we want for, we haven't, like, essentially the non-disclosure portions. What do we need to say? Yes, that will work. No, that won't. These are portions that we would then add and discuss in terms of, can we go forward with the contract? In terms of numbers of meetings, that sort of thing, that is written in the RFP. There's a minimum, and then they have to give costs for additional meetings. So That is to be determined by us. That's not a make or break on the contract. So hopefully that did answer a few questions.
I have a question, and then after that, Commissioner Fornashari, and then Commissioner Sadwani. And my question is, does the subcommittee envision itself being, if we were to motion and move forward with an intent to award, would the subcommittee be the entity that would be negotiating the terms of the contract? Would your committee be taking on the lead?
Yes.
In the negotiating of terms, working with staff on finalizing the contracting process.
There's very little. There's there from the commission in terms of, if we say, a particular, essentially, like when I mentioned this item H, you have to fill out item D. If we say we actually did add in, and they've already publicly said yes. The issue is, yes, we have to know everything about what they're doing up till the 10 years. Can they work on other projects during? Right now, they must disclose anything that they would be contemplating. If we wanted to put an additional, no, you can't be working on anything while you're working with us. That item would then, we would take that idea, but legal would actually be working on this, because ultimately the contract we can put these little parts in, and we can say with the proposer, yes, we would agree to that. Then legal being, I think it's OSL, actually comes up with, this is the final contract, bingo, yes, and they sign it. So we're more of we are the people who work with the proposer and hand it to legal, if that helps.
Thank you for the clarification. Commissioner Fornashari?
I think Commissioner Sinai was ahead of me, and I was just going to try to answer Commissioner Ahmed's question.
Commissioner Sinai, and then we'll go back to Commissioner Fornashari.
Okay, so I completely blanked out on my question again. Go ahead.
We'll come back to you. Commissioner Fornashari?
So Commissioner Ahmed, you asked about the plan and how are we going to manage the plan. And I'm going to propose later in this meeting to revisit a suggestion by Commissioner Sadwani that we put together a larger subcommittee that would meet in public. That would be some combination of the outreach committee, the line drawing committee, the language access committee, probably the data management committee. We have to figure out how we manage it in a way that we don't get a quorum for this. But just like the legal subcommittee gets together, we get representatives of each of the committees that are that have interest in the plan, and work with our outreach team, work with the line drawing organization that we bring in, and develop a plan for our public input in line drawing meetings. So that's what I was going to propose. It's up to the commission how we go forward with it, but I thought it would be a collaborative effort with the line drawers and our outreach committee, our outreach staff and the various subcommittees.
Commissioner Sadwani, then Commissioner Anderson.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was actually just going to respond to Commissioner Ahmed's question about disclosure. And at this point in time, the RFP merely asked for a disclosure of conflicts of interest, and that didn't preclude people from applying or being qualified if they had potential conflicts of interest, simply that they had to be disclosed. I think there was in many of the conversations that Commissioner Anderson and I had with individuals who are engaged in redistricting, there's a clear sense, and they said it multiple times today, it only happens once every 10 years. So in the meantime, they have to do something. So most firms are going to have some kind of conflict of interest, potentially. We didn't want that to stop people from applying, which is why we opted for disclosure. That's certainly something we can discuss further as we move into the contracting phase.
Commissioner Anderson?
I just want to say yes, the plan, working on the plan is something, this was their idea. And we've already had a bunch of discussions through our meetings back and forth of, that's not exactly what we were thinking. And, oh, that really is back and forth. And this, even just in our discussions of timelines, this is another idea so what we're looking for here is this a group that we could work with these guys. These guys are interested. It isn't like, this is what we want to do, period. This, take it or leave it. Do we feel that they have flexibility, that this is a group we could work with? Because we know amongst the whole commission, in terms of things that would work, I know the outreach plan has many issues is like, that's not quite how we're saying it. And a little bit, we have more input for the plan that we want to use. And I believe that would be a further discussion of what do we want to do with the time frame, like Commissioner Kennedy brought up. These are all items that we will discuss in the next portion of one of our meetings, and actually set up time of once we kind of know our window, when is that? Is it February 15th? Is it not? That part we actually work on. What do we want to do in this extra period of time? But that's not a discussion we need to have now. But the idea, my intent on all of that was it's a full commission, not just a few of the subcommittees, because I think everyone has ideas, and then we can break those portions into our subcommittees. But I don't want us to focus on what is our plan right now. This is an idea that has never been completely formulated as much as it has been right now. And I love that we're all trying to jump in on it, because that's exactly what we want to do. And let's do that. I think we've allotted some time in some of our meetings coming up that we can actually specifically do just that. So I would like us to move forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. At this time, is there a motion on the floor for an intent to award? Commissioner Anderson.
I move that we I move that we go ahead and vote that we approve the Haystack Q2 team with the intent to award the contract.
Second.
Discussion? Commissioner Sinai.
I think one of my big concerns is really if they get the contract in Michigan and they get the contract in California. Yes, Michigan might be small, but it is a new redistricting effort, and so that takes a lot of effort. I know it's up to them how they balance that, but I did want to put that out there.
Thank you, Commissioner Sinai. Commissioner Turner.
Thank you, Chair. To that point, did I understand them to say they had a larger group of employees or people that's going to work with it, and that would be something that would be parsed out specifically perhaps to a different group? And maybe if we need to get clarification about that, we can. But I'm walking away thinking that if they are awarded also Michigan, there would be a different group of individuals working on that.
Commissioner Sinai, and then Commissioner Fernandez.
I think clarity would be great, because they did say that they were going to have a different group, but it sounded like the program director and the program manager, whatever, the two top people would be working on both. And so I think that's where we need the clarity.
Commissioner Fernandez.
Yeah, I was just going to validate what Commissioner Turner said, is that that question was raised to them, and they did say that they would have a separate set of individuals and line drawers working on that effort. So personally, I'm not concerned if they are awarded that contract. And again, they are a business, and you can't rely on just one contract. So that's it.
Commissioner Sadwani.
I just wanted to share, I failed to share earlier that Commissioner Anderson and I did contact all of the references that were listed, and happy to answer any questions there, but overwhelmingly, all of the different individuals that we spoke with spoke very highly of both firms, of the work here in California and San Diego, as well as Haystack's work in Arizona in the 2010 commission. So I just wanted to add that we have done that due diligence, and as expected, right? I mean, we don't typically put references that would say bad things about you, but a host of different political parties and positions within the redistricting process, and all of them came back with very high regard for both firms.
Any other comment before we go to public comment? And I am seeing hands being raised in public comment. Commissioner Anderson?
Yeah, on the line of the references, and I did bring up, Mr. John O'Neill. I spoke to in Arizona, and they were extremely divided. It was they actually had five commissioners, 2 Republican, 2 Democrat, 1 independent, and to the point where they actually had Republican legal counsel, Democratic legal counsel. They were extremely issue, and the maps. Not only were they, the group did have to write out because Haystack was more of a Democrat, and my understanding by the end of it all, the Republicans were saying, "Wow, where was the Republican version of these guys? These guys were absolutely fantastic." And the John O'Neill, they said, this was the first time in Arizona's history he was responsible for putting together the map, and it pre-cleared Section 5. It was the first time in Arizona's history. So yes, he does have serious Democrat connections, and I think that's something as the commission. I was expected to talk a bit more about that. How do we feel? What's the perception on it? But he does have amazing credentials of impartiality, and unfortunately, the redistricting portion only happens for about 2 to 3 years maximum, and then what do you do the rest of the time until another 10 years? So I just thought I'd bring that up, but raving reviews about everyone and each member on the teams.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. Any other comments before we go to public comment? With that, Katie, can you please open up the phone line?
Chair, I'm seeing Commissioner Kennedy real fast.
Oh, Commissioner Kennedy?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say that I'm not expressing opinions on this out of an abundance of caution. I've had a sporadic professional relationship with Karen McDonald since 2007, and so just out of an abundance of caution, and particularly if my vote is not necessary, I don't intend to participate beyond listening, but just wanted that to be out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kennedy. Commissioner Akutagawa?
I'm sorry to ask this question, but I am curious as to, I know we have people in queue for public comment. I also want to just note that I think we're getting past the time that we're required to take a break. So
I just asked the question to Katie and to Christian about a break.
Chair, we are
Yes.
good. We are good to go. If we can just, if we just want to get through public comment.
So let's do public comment and see where we're at that point.
Sounds
Given
good.
that we're planning to go to to lunch after that and then not come back to public session. Thank you.
Sounds good, Chair. All right. In order to maximize transparency and public participation in our process, the commissioners will be taking public comment by phone. To call in, dial the telephone number provided on the live stream feed. It is 877-853-5247. When prompted to enter the meeting ID number provided on the live stream feed, it is 930-4716-7360 for this week's meeting. When prompted to enter a participant ID, simply press the pound key. Once you have dialed in, you will be placed in a queue. To indicate you wish to comment, please press *9. This will raise your hand for the moderator. When it is your turn to speak, you will hear a message that says the host would like you to talk and to press *6 to speak. If you would like to give your name, please state and spell it for the record. You are not required to provide your name to give public comment. Please make sure to mute your computer or live stream audio to prevent any feedback or distortion during your call. Once you are waiting in the queue, be alert for when it is your turn to speak, and again, please turn down the live stream volume. The Commission is taking public comment at this time on the line drawing item 11. Sorry. And we do have someone with their hand up, and I will open their line. And the line is open for you.
Hi. I was listening to the presentation earlier, and I understand that it is a challenge for a firm wanting to work with the Commission to know what to do for the next 10 years. And it's one thing for commissioners to say they won't run for office for the next 10 years, but when you have actual jobs to go back to, it's more difficult for these firms that are doing putting the bids in for the redistricting. And I assume you're not planning on paying your consultants enough so that they don't have to work for anyone else for the next 10 years. Paying them as that much would honestly be a terrible waste of taxpayer dollars, so conflicts may be inevitable. It is a challenging balancing act. And I will say you should give these firms credit for the fact that they actually did disclose to you. You asked a lot from them, and they provided a lot of information to you. As I said, I was listening a little bit earlier today. You saw a letter about another firm not doing all of their disclosures. This team, on the other hand, indicated they were not only happy, but thought it was important to do those disclosures. That speaks an awful lot for their willingness to live up to the spirit of the law to ensure citizens and not politicians draw the lines. And I have no doubt, based on their presentation, they will work with the Commission to address any issues that may arise. I want to thank you all for the work that you do, and thank you for taking my comment.
And for those in the queue, if you would like to make a comment, please press *9 to raise your hand. But as of this time, that was the only person that had raised their hand.
Thank you, Katie. We'll wait a minute.
Mm-hmm. Just so you know, Chair, the instructions are complete on the stream.
Appreciate it. Thank you. With that, we'll close public comment and go to a. Are we ready to take a vote, Commissioner Anderson?
I do want us to mention because the cost portion is open. We have not actually discussed that. Mm-hmm. Which we should. And it is, if it's on our website, it was forwarded to us. I see Commissioner Sinai, or I can just give it, essentially the basic cost is around 1.5 million. And with the additional meetings that we asked for, based on the different ones, it's 1.6. So that's, kind of within our, I think people were thinking about that. I don't remember exactly what it was in 2011. Well, I'll just say that. And I see other hands up.
Commissioner Fernandez.
I just wanted to comment on that we had budgeted 1.5 million for line drawers, so it's right in the basically the same amount, and that was did I go off? That was 1.5 without additional.
Thank you, Commissioner Fernandez. I don't see any other hands up at this point. Given that's the case, I'm going to ask Ms. Sheffield for a roll call or for a vote.
Ms. Sheffield is not here, so I will go ahead and do that. This is Executive Director Hernandez. Okay, so the motion is to move ahead and vote to approve Haystack DNA and Q2 data and research with the intent to award. It was motion by Commissioner Anderson, seconded by Commissioner Sadwani. Commissioner Turner.
Yes.
Commissioner Vasquez.
Yes.
Commissioner Yee.
Yes.
Commissioner Ahmed.
Yes.
Commissioner Kutagawa.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Fernandez.
Yes.
Commissioner Fornashari.
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Abstain.
Commissioner Lamons.
Yes.
Commissioner Sadwani.
Yes.
Commissioner Sinai.
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor.
Yes.
And Commissioner Toledo.
Yes.
Okay, so we have all but one.
Thank you, Director Fernandez Fuentes. We will be going to lunch at this time and coming back into closed session. So we won't be coming back to public session today. We'll be coming back tomorrow at 9:30. In terms of closed session, we'll be starting at, it's almost 1 o'clock right now, so let's aim for 2 o'clock for closed session and go from there. So we'll see you back at 2 o'clock for closed session, and we'll see the public tomorrow at 9:30.